Hi, my name is Whitney Gbur, and today I'm going to be talking to you about raising EPAS reading comprehension scores to hit our school's target. My first question for you is, what is reading comprehension? It's this thing that we're all supposed to be teaching, but do we really even comprehend it ourselves as instructors? So what is reading comprehension? Webster's Collegiate Dictionary offers this definition. It is the capacity of the mind to perceive and to understand. Reading comprehension, then, would be the capacity to perceive and understanding the meanings communicated by text. Today, we will be looking at our students' ability to do so in the form of state standardized tests. So what does it mean to be a reading comprehension teacher at the secondary level? There are many skills that we are expected to teach. Some of these include activating prior knowledge, setting the purpose, predicting, decoding text specifically oftentimes regarding vocabulary, summarizing, visualizing, questioning, monitoring our understanding, and reflecting and applying. In addition to these skills that we actively teach, as instructors, we also need to be identifying the needs of our students. When I say needs, I mean the deficits of our students. What are our students struggling with? Where are their areas of that they need to improve, and what can we be doing to improve these areas? We need to be providing the opportunity for kids to apply the skills in and outside of the classroom. And we need to make these skills applicable and beneficial to the students because, as you know, as secondary teachers, the students often ask the question, when am I going to have to use this in the future? If we're able to prove to them that this is worthy of their time, we will hopefully be able to have them buy into our idea. And then finally, we need to provide feedback. This is in their written work, this is in their oral work, but the students need to be hearing things from their instructor about the things that they did well and areas for improvement. So today we're going to look at some background information regarding the different theories that lead to reading comprehension. So first, we're going to talk about reading comprehension acquisition. How does one begin to form the ability to comprehend text? First is the pre-reading phase, which is prior to age 6. During this time, the child gains awareness of print and sounds while gradually learning to make associations between the two. Secondly is the alphabetic phase. This is during kindergarten to 2nd grade, and oftentimes during this time, the students are able to decode single words in simple stories. Next is the orthographic phase, which is roughly 3rd and 4th grade, where the child is able to analyze unknown words using orthographic patterns and contextual references. So, this picture that I'm showing you is current data about SHS students. This is to give you an idea of the demographics of the population that we work with. As we've seen over the past few years, the demographics of our school are ever changing, and we do see that this begins to influence our test scores, unfortunately for us, negatively. So if you take a look at the pie chart, you will notice that 66.9% of our students are white, 13.1% are Hispanic, and this is growing, 0.2% are Native American, 5.2% are Black, 11.9% are Asian, and 2.6% are multiracial. Now this chart is extremely important. What you are looking at is a comparison of all the schools in our district. You will notice Schaumburg off to the right, and it looks at their reading and math scores from both the years 2010 and 2011. For the purpose of this presentation, we are specifically going to be focusing on the reading scores, and if you notice on the left, they are broken down into several different categories. All, meaning all students, white, Black, Hispanic, Asian or Pacific Islander, students with disabilities, and economically disadvantaged students. Now, you're probably also noticing the different colors here in the presentation. If you can't read this, it says red stands for the percentage meeting or exceeding standards decreased. The group did not make AYP. So red is the worst thing you can see. And as you can see, our all category for all of our students in reading is in red. Yellow stands for the percentage meeting or exceeding standards increasing. However, this group still did not meet AYP, which is 3 of our categories here. And then finally in the green is the group meeting AYP. And as you can see, unfortunately, for Schaumburg reading scores, none of those are in green. This next screen looks at the reading scores throughout the students' years. freshman to sophomore. For those of you who aren't familiar with the state tests, the freshmen take something called the Explore. They also take this during 8th grade. The sophomores take a test called the Plan, and then obviously the juniors would take the ACT. And as teachers of English, we are responsible for both their reading and their English scores. For this presentation, we're going to be focusing on just the reading aspect. However, the English is based on English conventions of standard English. So, if you look here, what you are able to see on the top all the way across left to right are the total number of students that we are looking at for this data. EXP stands for the Explore test, reading average. So as you can see, for all SHS students, we had 559. 15.3 was the average reading score for the Explore test, 8th grade and freshman year. The next column in green, Explore reading to Plan reading, was a 2.7 point growth, meaning that the average Plan, which is our sophomore reading score, was an 18. Again, the next column to the right, also shaded in green, is the Plan reading score to ACT reading, and that is a 3.1 point growth, leaving us at an average ACT reading score of 21.1. And then finally, in the right column, the last column shaded in green, you will notice that there's a 5.8 point growth from the Explore reading freshman year to the ACT reading passage junior year. Now, for those of you looking at that ACT reading average at 21.1, just to give you an idea, 21 is the average ACT score to get into most Illinois state schools, such as Northern, Eastern, Western, and Southern. So our goal as a school is to get everyone's average score up to a 21. So ideally, we would like reading English to be at 21, if not higher. For our students that are considering going to other universities, Big Ten, out of state, private, oftentimes they are looking for higher scores than this. So as you can see, we are right on the cusp here of that. So we're going to take a look at some of the theories behind reading comprehension, just to bring some light and some awareness to us as instructors about how all this begins to happen. So the first that we're going to look at is the theory of cognitive development created by Piaget. It describes the ways in which the quality of children's thinking changes over time and is progressive. 4 factors influence a child's cognitive development, according to this theory: biological maturation, activity, social experiences, and equilibration. The 4 stages of thinking from childhood to adulthood, according to this theory, are sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational, which we will break down. So, the sensory motor period is birth to 2 years old. And this period states that thought process is based on sensory experiences as the child explores the world, and the child does not have sufficient language ability to communicate with words at this time. So even though the student isn't able to communicate, they are taking in a lot about our world, they are learning a lot, and this has to do with all of their senses. Next is the pre-operational period, which is 2 to 7 years. During this time, there's rapid language development. They have the ability to organize and categorize understanding of the world with words, and they begin to formulate concrete thinking. Next is the concrete operational period, which is 7 to 11 years. I hope you're starting to see the connections and how they begin to build. This is the use of concrete objects to begin processing abstract concepts. At this age, students are able to take a word and associate it with a concrete object. They're able to take an idea, associate it with a concrete object. And then finally, the formal operational period, which is 11 years old to adult, where language acquisition allows for use in abstract ways. And this is the developmental state that we are experiencing with our students, and we are encouraging them to use their knowledge of language in abstract ways in terms of this test. Next is the maturation theory, and again, I'm just presenting all this. You're free to form your own opinions, but just to give you an idea of what different people have shared with us about their findings and their theories. In the maturation theory, it suggests that reading instruction should not be implemented until the students reach the age of 6.5 years old. Any prior instruction had the potential to cause damage to a student's reading ability. Now, for those of you who maybe even have young children, you might be thinking that this seems a little bit crazy or a little bit different, because at the 6.5-year-old age, the students are already well into school, and if they have never received any instruction, we might see a very different world today. Next is the theory of literacy development. This is a three-dimensioned theory. I'm going to break down the three dimensions for you. First is the explanation of the developmental nature of literacy learning. Second, explanation of the four processes Holdaway viewed as central to literacy learning. And third, explanation of a method of teaching designed to promote developmental literacy learning. Next is the emergent literacy theory. Emergent literacy was coined by Marie Clay. She believes that children's development in the areas of listening, speaking, reading, and writing are all interrelated. Literacy development starts at birth and is continuous and ongoing. And she also believes that the children's home environment plays a critical role in the development of literacy abilities. Now, this ties into the family literacy theory, that you can see below, that states the ways that families, children, and extended family members use literacy at home and in their community affects a student's literacy capabilities. Abilities. Now, you might be wondering, why is this important to us if we don't have control of this outside of our classroom? And while that may be true, it is important to just acknowledge that there are some things that are out of our control as instructors of literacy, and it is important to know the students well enough to kind of understand, where they're coming from and how that might have shaped the student that you are seeing today. Next, we're going to talk about perspectives on cognitive processing. On this slide, though it's incomplete, I'm going to look at student data versus some of the theories, such as classical conditioning. And classical conditioning, as we learned, states that students' positive and negative emotional states become connected to stimuli related to education, such as books, specifically tests that we're talking about, teachers, and the classroom. For us as educators, the takeaway needs to be that we need to stress improvement rather than perfection so as not to create more anxiety and stress for our students in raising these scores. There are three things that go into achieving higher levels of student performance. These are curriculum and learning standards. Are we clearly communicating to our students what we would like them to learn? Do we as instructors know and clearly understand what is expected of us in terms of teaching? How do we assess our students? Are those related to our standards, directly comparable or have direct connections? And then finally, the interventions for students that maybe aren't meeting our goals, or even students who are meeting goals and still have some improvement that they would like to make. So I'd like you to turn and talk right now about what you have done in the past to instruct reading comprehension. I'd like you to share some of your best lessons with your colleagues to get an idea of what we do as instructors. We will come back and share in a moment. Thank you very much for sharing. It was great to hear about all the different ideas that we have of instructors, and hopefully you've identified maybe someone that you could talk to later to take that activity back home with you. But I want to talk a little bit more about putting these activities into practice. I'm going to be giving you 5 classroom applications, all of which are skills that relate directly to the state standardized tests, the first of which is inferring. Here I'm providing you an activity that you could use in your classroom. I'll break it down for you, and also a rubric that you can use to help assess this skill. Secondly is a sequencing chain. It allows you to look at the different events in the story and how they build to create some sort of meaning. Vocabulary in context. How can our students use context clues to identify words that they are unfamiliar with? Identifying the main idea, the who, what, where, when, why, how, and any important events or details that happen in the story. And then finally, summarizing. Can our students summarize and apply that to state standardized tests? Now, one of the biggest struggles for teachers at the secondary level that are preparing their students for these tests is how can we diversify to meet all of our students' needs? And unfortunately, one of the biggest frustrations is that we have no say in the formation of this test. And oftentimes we find that they don't diversify for different student needs. So we are really limited in what we are able to do. But I thought that there were maybe 3 ways that I could suggest that we can reach all of our students on a more day-to-day frequent basis. And that is to diversify your passages for topics, interest levels, and fiction versus nonfiction. Know your students, know what they're interested in. Draw from passages that may not be something that you would see exactly on the Plan Explorer ACT, but something maybe of an appropriate reading level that does interest your students so you can appeal to their needs at this time. Know your students' accommodations and their IEPs and their 504 plans. Oftentimes at the secondary level, those include